Hello, hope you're doing well. I'm Gary Wheeler, and welcome to the section on employment organizational compliance with employment laws. Well, I'm sorry we couldn't be together in person because of the virus. We're lucky that we're able to pre-record this session, and I'll be watching it just along with you. And because of that, I'll be able to answer any questions you may have during this session. So feel free to submit those questions using the chat feature, and I'll do my best to answer them as the session goes on. You've probably heard the saying before, it's not how much money you make that's important, it's how much money you keep. Well, there's certainly a lot of truth in that statement, and that kind of statement is usually made in the context of personal wealth building and meant to encourage us to, plod along steadily, make good decisions, and to, be patient with our money. In the context of health, we're told to eat well and exercise. Again, it's a very simple concept, but much easier said than done. Well, in the context of human resources, when we're talking about organizational compliance with employment laws, we know from being in the industry that avoiding litigation, it's much easier to lay out, plans for strategies about how we're going to do it than it is to actually achieve those objectives. So, well, why is that? Why is it the compliance is, part of it's necessary, but it's not fun. Certainly, let's compare it to some other areas of business. Technology can be very inspiring. Sales charts well. We can use metrics to show how well, you're doing in sales. It's much more difficult to do that in human resource to show what your organization, what pain it's avoided. So, for those of you who worked in organizations that have struggled with compliance, it's probably easier to explain what happens when you work for an organization that has a problem with compliance issues. Typically, in those kind of situations, those companies will receive more regulatory fines, they'll have higher legal bills, and they'll spend much more time on time-consuming inexpensive litigation. So during my career, I've worked with employers and have noticed that strong compliance follows usually one thing that's very important and very obvious, and that's culture. A strong culture really trumps organizational attributes that are certainly important, but not as important as culture. Competency, compliance, brand, all very important concepts and objectives, but a strong culture trumps those. You've probably heard the saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. In the context of our discussion today, a legal department and a human resources department can work hard to create a solid compliance plan, complete with ideas on best practices, and schedule key training. But and you could even get buy-in from the chief executive officer, the board, or other key decision makers. But if the culture doesn't support the change that is needed, then the status quo will win. So even though culture eats strategy for breakfast, the focus of the presentation today will be on strategy, but with an eye towards, well, what else needs to be done to make sure that the strategies are implemented. And one of the things that I want to recognize is that, I'm a lawyer and you're attending a law firm hosted by, a law firm. So our experience with legal compliance is with legal compliance, is not with leadership, but leadership and culture is extremely important. So I urge you not to overlook the importance of leadership training and invest in it. If it's good, solid training on leadership, even if it doesn't have anything to do with the alphabet soup of legal issues that we're discussing here today, it will help your company improve its organizational, its culture, and as a consequence, the likelihood that it will be more willing to accept changes that are needed and make way for compliance. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that kind of leadership training that anywhere you can get it for your organization, it's going to be helpful. Okay, so, well, one strategy for better organizational compliance is to set priorities. You can become overwhelmed with all of the things to do on your to-do list from a compliance perspective. And after attending today's virtual seminar, you may have that feeling of being overwhelmed a bit. So if you end today with just one significant item on your compliance list, what should that be? Employment litigation is costly, it's time-consuming, and risky, but not all risks are the same. Which risks are most dangerous to employers generally? In an effort to answer that question, I analyzed the top 5 employment litigation results in 2019. Big data or metrics can be used to illustrate employment litigation trends. In turn, those trends can help employers focus on the most risky areas. In 2019, there were over 17,000 employment lawsuits terminated, that is, concluded at the trial court level in federal court.